we're going to play around with some distortion tools: warp, puppet warp, and liquefy. First thing we need to do is unlock our background layer so that we can make adjustments to our photograph. Warp is under Edit, Transform, Warp. And what we can do here is mimic the fisheye lens effect. You'll see a grid over the top. I'm going to click on these sort of inner quadrant vertices and click and drag and create this sort of circular effect in the center, sort of mimicking the fisheye. And you can go kind of as extreme as you want to create that fisheye effect. So that is one of the things you can do in Warp. I'm going to click on this undo button because I want to show you another tool, but you would click on the check mark if you wanted to save your changes. Now I'm going to go to the puppet warp, which is maybe more powerful. Again, under Edit, but then you just go to puppet warp. Now you're going to see a sort of a mesh over the top of your photograph. And this puppet warp tool, you use the trackpad or your mouse in two different ways: by clicking to create a sort of a pin that will keep things from being warped, and then a click and drag to actually do the distortion. So first you want to sort of pin portions of your photo in place that maybe you don't want to be distorted. So let's say I want to kind of protect this portion of the camera, but then I want to distort the lens. So I'm going to kind of put these little pins in place, and I was just clicking. Now if I want to distort the lens to sort of flare it out, I'm going to click and drag. Now, did you see how like it kind of affects that whole photo? I'm going to do a Command Z to go back to that. It's nice to sort of pin the corners in place, just sort of to keep the photo a little bit intact as you're doing the distortion. That's sort of up to you. But now you'll see when I click and drag, it's affecting that corners of the photo a little bit less. And I can sort of like maybe distort this lens out so it's like a giant lens taking a photo of Bob here. All right, so that's what the puppet warp can do. You could even then maybe, I don't know if we want to distort Bob a little bit too. Once you have that distortion, how you'd like it, you can hit the return key or click the check mark, and now you have your distorted photo. The last tool I want to show you is liquefy. So I'm going to go back to sort of the beginning here. Liquefy lives under Filter, Liquefy. And we're going to be using these brushes first. I'm going to make sure I'm on this sort of little finger smudge tool. That is the forward warp tool. And then I'm going to turn my brush size down. This is pretty large. I'm going to do the bracket keys to make it smaller. You can also use this slider. And the bigger the brush tool, the more effect you're going to get. Maybe I just want to give Bob here some kind of distort his head a little bit so he looks a little bit like he's got some funny hair. Okay. Maybe I want to distort the camera again. I can make this a little bit smaller. I could make it sort of like look like a little spiky camera kind of a thing. Now if you really want to get crazy, you can make your brush size really large and really start distorting, so much so that it really kind of becomes unrecognizable, and it's sort of like a puddle of color. So, there's a lot of different ways that you can use this tool. There are other types of warp tools along the left-hand side. Feel free to experiment with those and have fun. Once you like the photo, how you want it, then you can click the OK button, and it'll bring you back into your Photoshop interface. Have fun.